Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 102. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very, very, very special guest out in the state of Washington, Megan Murray. Megan, how are you?
Hey, Joe. I'm great. I am so excited to be on this podcast. I feel like we've been chatting about doing this for a while, and I'm so happy to be here. And I can't wait to hear what quote you come up with, because I know in every episode there's a quote, and I just can't wait to hear what we come up with on this one.
Yeah, they usually come to me throughout the episode, and I'm curious to see what comes to mind as we talk here. And so, for a little bit of context, we've known each other through the lens of social media for, I'd say, like maybe 3 years now. And I know that you've had a lot of changes in life over the past, 2-3 years. And I've followed along through social media, but I feel like there's still a lot that I don't know. And so I really would love to use this as a way for us to catch up and for the audience to hear your story and just get to know you as a human. And so to start there, how would you introduce yourself as Megan Murray, the human being, to the audience who doesn't know who you are, maybe?
Absolutely. So I'm Megan Murray, also known as Bacon, Megan Cheese on Instagram. I am 28 years old. I was born in New York, but I moved to Dubai when I was 2 and lived there for about 7 years with my family. Most people assume it's from a military family reason, and my dad just was in a career that took us over there, and I'm so grateful for that experience. And then when I was 9, moved to Florida, and then ended up living the rest of my young adult to grown adult life in Florida, and met my now husband. He was my high school sweetheart. And we both ended up going to Florida State University, where I got a degree in public relations. And then the same year I graduated, we got engaged, and we also got married, and I became a military spouse. And from then on, it's been a roller coaster. It's been an adventure. We went from moving quite a few times over the last 6 years, went from Tallahassee to Pensacola to Pace, all those were in Florida, to then Texas, to Washington, back to Texas, Florida. Now I'm back in Washington, and I'm excited to dive into all the many reasons that took place. Some of it was military, some of it was not. And so now I reside here in Washington State with my husband, and I am on an exciting journey of just kind of like rediscovering myself and what's next.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions. First and foremost, before we started recording, you warned me that there might be jets flying over you, and you're in an RV at the moment. And so tell us a little bit about where you are now and what that's like, and then we can kind of backtrack from there.
Definitely. I feel like living in an RV is so normal to me now. I forget it's like such a fun topic to talk about for other people. But yeah, so I currently live in an RV with my husband and our husky pup Sky, on base. So when we got orders to move from Texas to Washington, my husband Sean, he has talked a lot about wanting to live this nomadic lifestyle, living in a van or an RV, and I was not on board at all. And he finally got me one day to go look at RVs. He's like, just for fun, why not? And I was like, okay, just so you'll stop bugging me about this, let's just for fun go look. And we looked at RVs and I'm like, these are nice. The fact that you can tow these and this is they're like luxury homes on wheels. So I he finally got me, on board with talking about it. And then when we found out that we got Washington, it's such a beautiful place to be camping and exploring, and the houses here were just so expensive and we were tired of renting. We weren't ready to buy. So he was like, I feel like this is a good time to do this. And I was like, you know what the heck, let's do it. So we moved into an RV, and he's been in the RV for 3 years. I've been in and out because of my journey over the last 3 years since we had moved here, with which we'll get into moving to Texas. So yeah, so that's why we live in an RV. I think we'll only be in here another year. It's very bittersweet. And then the reason there's jets that may fly over is because we are on a Naval Air Station Woodby Island, and this is the home of the growlers, and my husband flies the growler. That was a dream of his since he was young, to fly jets, and he is living out his dream, and it inspires me every day. So
Mm.
kind of a long-winded way of explaining the RV and the jets, but yeah, kind of go hand
Yeah.
in hand.
Yeah, it all makes sense. And, at least for me, when I talk to people who are military spouses, I think a lot of times the conversation easily gravitates toward what's hard about it. But I'm curious for you, what's the best part about being a military spouse?
I completely agree. It's so easy to talk about hard things, but I feel like it goes hand in hand with the good things. Like the moving is hard and having to pick up and start over, but that's the beauty of it is I get to meet so many new people and we get to experience so many new places. So I would say the community and the experience and how much you grow in such a short amount of time is incredible. There's a lot of scary, challenging situations that I'm put into that I wouldn't have willingly put myself into. But then I look back and I'm like, wow, I have grown so much from this experience. And Sean and I talk about this all the time. Like we would be such different people, if it hadn't been for this lifestyle. And it's really, really cool to look back on the last 6 years, especially since him and I have known each other since high school. Like it's really cool to have your person and have gone through these stages of life and seen each other grow independently and together. And yeah, I would say those are some of the many beautiful parts of the hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think we'll have plenty to talk about with this first question. So I'll just ask you, when you look back at your 28 years of life so far, what is the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
So I have two routes I want to take this. One is health related. The other is along the lines of what we were just talking about. Um, Something that I feel like I haven't talked about much within my social media journey, or outlet if people don't know me from social media, is when I was younger, I had quite a few medical conditions that forced me to make some, I feel like, grown up decisions very young. When I was, I'd say around the age of 6, I started having this issue where my heart would start beating really fast, and my parents were really concerned, and we didn't know what it was. And I remember having pictures of I was hooked up to all these wires, and I wore this little backpack to school so my doctors could figure out what was causing this. And fast forward, it turns out I had this very rare condition called SVT, supraventricular tachycardia. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
So we had never heard of it. I think it was very new then. And it took years to figure out what it was, especially because we didn't know what brought it on. It would happen sometimes and then it wouldn't for a while. And then as I got older, it would happen more frequently. And about the age of 12, we finally saw a specialist, and they had a way to fix this. And they said I could either take medication for the rest of my life, or we could do a procedure that has a very, very high chance of working, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the rest of my life. And my parents at my young age looked to me and asked me what I wanted to do, which I respect so much that they wanted me to make the decision. And without skipping a beat, I said, oh, I want to do the procedure. Like, I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. And so went into that, and it was a catheter ablation where there were 6 catheters in my groin, and they burned the area, and they said if it doesn't occur over the next 2 years, then you're cured. And I am so glad I made that decision because it affected me being able to play sports. It affected me even just I would go to a sleepover and I would just be hanging out with friends and my heart would start pounding and I would get lightheaded and dizzy and I it just made me not want to go do things because I didn't know when it would come on. So that was a really big, I feel like, decision that ended up affecting the rest of my life that I'm really glad that I had the choice in making, and I'm thankful for my parents for that. And I think it also helped as I entered another health related issue I had when I was younger, which I had this like span of life where like I feel like things were just hitting me and I had to just roll with it, but I also didn't know anything different. My second set of teeth on my left side of my face, when they grew in, they were fragments, so they weren't full teeth, which was
Whoa.
wild. And again, another like rare thing, which also kind of funny because my husband had the opposite issue. He grew too many teeth, so I think it's just funny that we found each other. But with that, I also had like a small palate and my jaw. I had an overbite, and as I got older, all these issues just came to a head where I had to have jaw surgery and I had to have a bone grafting surgery. So it ended up being like a 9 hour surgery. And it was in high school that I had this. And in
Mm.
high school, when your whole face is like has changed and you're going through this entire process, like it can be scary. You don't know what kids are going to make fun of you. But luckily, I had so many people rally around me, and I it didn't. I was never bullied. I'm very grateful. I feel like so many people have horror stories of that. But it was another big challenge that I faced early on in life, and I feel like that those situations just really made me to the person I am today. Where if there's a challenge, I'm gonna hit it head on and do what I need to do. And I know that I'm going to come out stronger on the other end. So those were things that I had no say it. Well, I had to say in the way it was going to go, but the way it was handed to me, I didn't. But I'm grateful for that because I think it made me a stronger person.
Mm.
Um, and then another hard thing, this won't be as long winded. I was going to say is the military spouse lifestyle. Like, yes, I did say yes to marrying someone in the service, but I did not know all that entailed. It's like when you're in love and you know you don't want to live without this person, but you don't realize all that's going to come with it. It's been a hard and challenging experience, but I also wouldn't trade it. And I'm so grateful for all that I've been able to do and the people I've been able to meet because of that hard.
Mm. Okay, so let's go back to some of the childhood health struggles
Mm-hmm.
first, and then we'll blend that into the military spouse stuff. So the SVT and the choice to do the procedure, I think is a really brave one. However, it sounds like at 6 years old, you had no hesitation. You knew that was what you wanted to do. That was the decision that you wanted to make, and you made it, which I think is admirable. And it also makes me think like, I think we all need a little bit more child in us. Because at that age, you were probably just thinking about, okay, I don't want to live the rest of my life with this regret that I could have fixed this and I didn't. And you just made the choice. And I think sometimes taking no risk is actually the biggest risk of all. And as kids, we kind of know that. And I think we start to forget that a little bit as we grow older. So, like, when you
Mm-hmm.
look back, did you even think twice about it? Or was it just like, hey, I got to do this? This is what we're doing?
I distinctly remember, and my parents have had told me this story again and saying like we just couldn't believe that you didn't even take a second thought. You just said, "Oh, I want to do the procedure." And I think it does have to do with from having dealing with this from 6 until about 12 and like it was a constant thing in my life and I was just ready to be done with it. And I think I was excited that there was just an option that could give me that and I'm like, let's do it. And I love that, like I said, my parents just, all right, she said let's do it, we're going to do that. Obviously as a parent, I'm not a parent yet, but just that trust they had in me of just that's what she wants and we're going to support her meant the world to me.
Yeah. So 12-year-old Megan, very wise decision making. And then you fast forward a little bit to high school. Did you meet Sean while you were going through all of the mouth stuff, or was it after that that you guys met?
I love that you asked that because he met me after all of this, and but he's seen pictures and he says it's so wild because my face shape did change from before and after the jaw surgery, and he was like it's so wild that I didn't know you with this previous face, but he's seen pictures and he knew me after. And I had this long journey of where I had braces on and off for years, and he met me when I had braces. And he'll still say, and I wouldn't smile a lot with my teeth when I was going through this, so I had this smirk, and he would say, even now he'll say, I miss that smirk he used to have. And I'm like, that's when I hated my smile. Like, I hate when you say that. So he did know me when I had braces, but no, I had already had the jaw surgery, and went through all my medical uh issues. Yeah, by the time we met.
Yeah, that note on smiling, or I guess lack of smiling, just made me think of how insecure I was, and I think we all are in middle school and high school about different things. If you could go back and tell high school Megan kind of one thing, give her a piece of advice, whether it's surrounding insecurities or something else, what would you go back and tell her, knowing what you know now?
One thing that I do love that I didn't let my situation do to myself is dim my smile. Yes, I mean, I've been smiling with my teeth, but I was always, I feel like, the most bubbly person. I loved being on camera. I would often steal my parents' video camera and I back then I was ahead of my time, I guess. Like little vlogs and do little home tours when we moved into our homes. And even though I may have been insecure of my smile and I knew that I was hiding it, I didn't make that my personality. And I look back and I'm really proud of myself. And I think that comes with being a kid and not being aware of what other people are really thinking about you. And maybe that's also why maybe I wasn't bullied, or maybe I didn't notice. I just was so in my own, I feel like, little world. And yes, of course, we're all going to have insecurities when I'm younger. And that was definitely my biggest insecurity. And I also think that's why I smile so much now, because it was a long road to get to the smile I have. And I just know that I can affect anybody at any time during the day. So, yeah, I think I would just be proud of her for still shining, even though I was dealing with some internal struggles.
That's cool. That's a great message. I think we all need that kind of messaging from time to time, whether we're little kids, teenagers, or full-grown adults. I think a lot of people out there need that kind of message. So now we're in high school. You and Sean meet. Can you take us through maybe the relationship to the point where you knew Sean was the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with?
Absolutely. It's so funny because I feel like when you meet someone so young, or at least for myself, I wasn't thinking automatically, oh, this is the guy I'm gonna marry. We're it. Like, I was so young. I wasn't thinking that at all. And it's fun how we just over time we became best friends first. And I feel like that's such an important foundation of who you end up marrying, is being each other's best friend. And it wasn't easy at first because he was a grade ahead of me. He ended up getting a baseball scholarship, and he attended, luckily, a college near where I was going to high school. But then by the time I went to college, I went to Florida State University, which was 7 hours away. And we came to a point of struggling of, okay, should we, I think we're about a year in at this point, and but we're so young, trying to decide if we wanted to continue dating, if we should just, you know, live our early, younger teen or older teens, almost 20s together, or we decided to stay together. And I'm so glad we did. That was our first year of long distance. And then we dated through college. And then the moment I knew he was the one was when we had started talking more seriously about him wanting to join the military. And I knew that I remember we'd even talked when he had first mentioned this, maybe 2 years in, that he wanted to join. And at that point, I still wasn't on board. I'm like, well, if he joins, I don't think it's going to work for us because I just don't want a life in the military. Like, I don't want to be a military spouse. But then 4 years in, he commits, and I just ask myself, do I want a life, without him at all, or do I want this life where, yes, it's going to be hard, but at least I get to have him with me for the rest of my life. And that's when I knew, like, I don't want to live a life without him. So that was in 2017. 2017 was a big year where a lot just came at me all at once, and I dove right in. But it took some time, needless to say.
Yeah, and I just think it's really encouraging for people out there who might be in relationships and they don't know yet, or they have to make tough decisions and they're wondering if if I'm grappling so much with whether or not to stay with this person, does this mean that I shouldn't be with this person? Or does it mean that we need more time? And should we fight through this? And is it worth the hard things? And the fact that you guys were best friends first, I think, is the key to that entire story. And it's so cool to see that you guys made it work and continue to make it work. And now you're living together. And I know that hadn't been the case for a while. So we'll get to all of that. But while we were on the topic of military spouses, I did want to ask, what are some of the hardest parts about that?
I would say when, and I'm going to speak from a spouse's point of view who's with an aviator. I know every service member does something different. With Sean specifically, with him being a pilot, he has gone a lot of long spans of time, sometimes abruptly, and you just have to pick up and figure things out while they're gone and make sure the home's still running, making sure if something I know a lot of spouses where things hit the fan, of course, once the guys leave, and they've got to just roll with it. The moves are really hard when you have to PCS, and it's just, and try care, like there's all these different unique situations that we're handed that we don't necessarily have the support. I feel like one of the best parts of marriages is that support. You guys are going through that together, and I have Sean's support and everything, but he might not be physically there, and he's got a bigger task at hand with his job, and flying a jet and all the stress that comes with that. It's like, what can I take off his plate so he's not worrying about all these little things. So I think just getting thrown into this lifestyle and not having like a book on, okay,
Mm.
this is what's gonna, like, there's so many things that just come out of nowhere, and you just have to pivot, and you just got to handle it. So I think a lot of just being alone and tackling things and not feeling like, okay, I can't do this because he's not home, or you get in the car and the car battery said, well, he's not here, so I've got to figure this out, or there's just so many different scenarios that you just can't predict, and you've got to just figure it out.
One comment and one question. Comment, it sounds like you are a stronger, more independent person because of these circumstances. And then question, what is the shortest amount of notice you've had for him having to just get up and go?
Um, I want to say, I mean, there could be as little as like 2 weeks. Normally, we get about a month. It really depends. He goes on, they're called debts, which are detachments. Like he's going on one for a month in July to August. And it's kind of an issue with us living in an RV because during season right now, which is the best time of the year for people who in RVs, you can only stay at an RV park for maybe a month, and then you have to move again. And we're full time pro RVers now, where a year in advance will book our RV reservations, but we didn't know he was going to be leaving for a month, so we're having to pivot where we're gonna put the RV in storage, and I'm just gonna go out there with him because there's no reservations available on the island. That's the issue too. We're on an island of where we can put the RV because I need to learn how to drive the pickup truck and tow the RV, so I'm not in the situation. That's next on the list. So I mean, a month maybe it is a good amount of time, but in situations where you've planned, it's
Mm.
like we're stuck in a sticky situation. So yeah, it
Yeah.
varies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a month to some people might sound like a long period of time, but when it is your life and your spouse and your life together, to know, oh, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks, he's going to be gone for X amount of time. I can't even imagine what that feels like. And I'm almost wondering if that gets easier the more that it happens, or if it's always the same amount of hard for you.
I think depends on who you ask. I think it's gotten easier, but maybe because I've been so used to living so independently for a while now. I will say though, and I know we'll get to this, I've only recently just gotten back with living with Sean. And I'm already like, if I'm gone from him, because I just went to my brother's wedding last month, and I was gone for, or actually this month, I was gone from Sean for like a week, and it felt like forever. So I don't know. I think I may have just gotten in a groove of getting used to it. But then once you're back with your person and you get back into, okay, this is how this feels, then I think it'll get hard again. I don't know when his next deployment will be, but I know going into that will be just as hard as was for the first deployment that we went through. So I think it really depends, but I feel more confident going into them. I know I've been through it and I can handle it, and I have people I can lean on. So yeah.
Yeah. I'll extrapolate to something I hope everybody can relate to, and then we'll move on to the next question. But, there's that cliche of it doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. And it sounds like it doesn't get easier, but you've been there, you've done that, and you're able to build confidence knowing that you've gotten through this in the past and you'll get through it again. And it sounds like each time you pick up new skills, maybe next time it's learning how to drive the truck with the RV attached. But I think that's such a cool way to look at that. So thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Definitely. And I couldn't agree more. Just like get more confident and stronger. Absolutely. I love the way you put that.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to notice that that's a choice on your end, because I would imagine that there are also many military spouses, both guys and girls, who don't feel like they get more confident, who don't feel like they get stronger or better because of it. And it's all about the perspective that you choose to adopt. And maybe that goes all the way back to just, the Megan that was shining as a kid. And that's just always who you've been. And that positivity has been with you. And, that carries on. So, with that being said, we talked about two of the harder circumstances that you've ever had to handle. On the flip side, what is the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose, and why did you do that thing?
So I've got another two-parter. One is a physical, and then one is more of a lifestyle. So physical would be in 2020, I ran my first half marathon, and hard is relative to some. That's piece of cake to me. Who, growing up, I would choose sports after I had cured my SVT. The sports I joined did not involve running. It's like, how can I avoid running at all costs? And I fell in love with swimming. And I swam throughout high school. I was co-captain of the high school swim team. Like, no running for me, no thank you. I remember I tried lacrosse, did not last. Like, so how I came about running my first half marathon was BPN had announced this Run One More challenge, and it was to run one more than you think you can. And at that point, I thought to myself, I know I can run 3 miles, like that's doable. So what scares me is 13.1 miles. And I ended up training for that over the course of months. I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to do it where I felt good. And yeah, I ended up running in the Austin half marathon in 2020. And I ended up running a sub 2 hour. For me, that was huge because I went into it just wanting to finish it. And then I remember thinking, I think I was like 10 miles in, like, oh, I need to go for like a sub 2. And it was so freaking hard. And I even have a YouTube video and I have a clip in the video where after I finished, my husband, Sean, was filming me. And I said, I am never doing this ever again. And then I went on to run 2 more half marathons the following years. And that was just it was hard as heck because, like I said, I wasn't going to do another one, but it taught me so much. And I'm so glad that I did that on purpose. So that's my first hard. And then my second would be, it was 2 years ago now, making the decision to move away from Sean and move to Texas to chase a dream that I had, selfishly, but with his full support. That was really hard. And then a little bit later, not a little bit later, almost 2 years later, making a decision to then leave my dream job and move back to, eventually get back to Sean. So that was my second hard. It was very, very hard decision, but one that I know was so integral in my journey and my story.
Yeah. So we'll take those one at a time. Let's start with the half marathon. I love what you said about hard being relative, because that is absolutely true. I love I love that you said after you finished running, you said out loud that you would never do that again, and then you did it 2 more times. I feel like that is such a common theme, not just in running, but when people do hard things. There's just this, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if I have quite the right words, but there's this feeling of like, I did that and I can do hard things again. And that is appealing no matter how much this first time hurt or sucked or was hard. So I'm curious, after running 3 half marathons now, are you done or are there more in the future or do you not know?
I'm a firm believer in never say never. I do love a challenge, mainly now that because I know the many benefits that come from doing hard things and challenging yourself. This was my first year not doing a half marathon. I had run the Austin Marathon for years in a row. One year, it was actually canceled because of the pandemic, and I just went and did it on my own because I'd already trained for it. So this was a year I took off because of I've just had so many transitions in life, and I didn't want to pressure myself because I was already dealing with a lot of hard in the rest of my life. So I took that pressure off myself, but I definitely think I will run at least another half. I feel like even Sean tells me, he's like, you've already run 3 half marathons. You need to run a full marathon now. And I'm like, I know, but never say never. I'm sure I will at some point. I do want another challenge right now. I'm enjoying just lifting and feeling good. So yeah, I'm sure at some point. I don't know when though.
Yeah, the full marathon comment was gonna come out of my mouth if you didn't say that. But I think like in your own timing, and yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about these challenging pursuits is that we're doing them for us, and sure, we can be doing them for other people as well, and our actions have a ripple effect. But at our core, we need to be doing things for the right reasons and for personal growth and from a place that comes from inside, not because we want attention on the outside. And that's a whole nother topic that we can get into when it comes to social media. But for now, I think that's really, really cool. And then the other thing I'll just say on that note, when it comes to running, when it comes to pushing yourself, is that, there's no problem or nothing wrong with taking a step back when everything else in life is hard. Because you mentioned that. You said you didn't run that fourth, I guess, half marathon because there was so much other hard in life. And we all have a certain bandwidth. We all have a certain capacity or tolerance for stress in our lives. And it's really it takes a high level of awareness to say, hey, my capacity is full, my bandwidth is taken up. If I do this thing, yes, it's hard. Yes, I might want to do it, but it's going to push me over the edge. I think that's a really wise decision. That's also a really hard decision within itself because it could
Yeah.
feel like you're taking the easy way out, even though it's what you need to do. Did you run into that resistance at all?
Oh, 100%. I feel like I put this pressure on myself, and I think that that's also part of my personality. I always need to be achieving something and doing something hard. And for the last, I'd say 6 years, it's been a physical hard. Like I need to be challenging, and it was for sure. And this was only recently I reached this just like realization that this last year I I intentionally didn't set a goal. And I have a coach, and she's one of my really great friends. She's a military spouse, and she's been coaching me for a few years now. And mainly just I love those check-ins. And in this last check-in, I had said to her how it's incredible that this past year, as much as we kept talking about, okay, when I reach this point, I'm gonna have this goal, and then the date came around and we both agreed, okay, I don't think this makes sense for me to just have a goal, just to have a goal. And I'm in a year now where I've been in a maintenance phase, but I've still been lifting and getting movement and getting sunlight and hydrating and all the things that create a balanced life so I can pour into other areas of my life. And that was a huge challenge for me to let go and not have this physical goal to chase. So you hit the nail on the head. That has absolutely been a challenge in itself for me this year.
I've got my first quote for you today. Albert Einstein
Ooh,
once said, I think it was Albert Einstein, he once said, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. And I think oftentimes I'm gonna create a new hashtag. Feel free to use it if you're listening. Goals are overrated. I think it's important to have goals. It's important to have direction, but just setting a goal for the sake of setting a goal or setting out to do something because you think other people are going to praise you for that thing, that's probably not a good reason to have a goal or to go do something. And I think oftentimes we lose sight of the process and the fact that how we feel is incredibly important. And sometimes we pursue things at the expense of our personal growth, our personal development, and what we actually need for what we think the world wants us to do. So kudos to you for that. I think it's really important to be in touch with that part of ourselves. And it's hard because it goes against what the world tells us is important.
Absolutely. And just being surrounded by so many strong and driven people, especially in, the VPN community. I have so many friends in that community. And on my social media feed, everyone's chasing something and it's so inspiring. Like I love it. And I think it makes me easily want to be like, okay, I should be chasing something. I should be getting ready for some sort of competition or some race or and it's easy to forget and want to get jump right back into it. And that's where those check-ins with my coach are like, so why are you wanting to have this goal? What's your and then I realize, oh, I don't really have this like this burning reason why I need to do this. I just need a goal. And so I've appreciated those check-ins. I totally feel like everyone should have a coach or someone that they can just confide in and be a sounding board and really ask those tough questions. So yeah, I could not agree more.
Yeah, I love that you've had such a good experience with your coach. Just a quick question on that. You mentioned that your coach is a really good friend of yours. Were they a really good friend of yours before they became your coach, or did you become friends with them as they were your coach?
So her name is Madison. Her and I met back in Florida on social media. I forget how I came across her page, but she was I think she, at the time was a coach at a local gym at one of the duty stations, and I think I'd followed her on Instagram, and then she posted about a giveaway and about free coaching, and I entered it, and that's when we met. And then when we started talking, she said, "I'm pretty sure our husbands fly together," because they were both naval at the time students.
Mm.
Um, and so we kind of just hit it off with having that commonality of being military spouses. And then after that free month of coaching, I'm like, oh, I'm all in. Let's keep doing this. And so it kind of just came hand in hand. It was like a beautiful blossoming friendship and coach. And it's fun because we talk through an app called WhatsApp just for coaching. So when we're doing our check-ins, it's as if I don't know her. We are strictly coach, and then we will text, through normal texting when it's friend stuff.
Mm. I love those boundaries. As a coach myself, I think boundaries are important. And the reason I asked that question in the first place was because I feel like I have the best job in the world because I get to become friends with all of my clients. And I almost feel like, in a sense, coaching is just being a really good friend to somebody while providing structure, knowledge, and added accountability and challenging people above and beyond what a friend might have the energy for. And so I love that you guys have such a great relationship. Now, to transition from one hard thing to another, you moved down to Texas away from Sean. And that's where it sounds like this next hard chapter, hard decision of life began. And I'll let you just take it from there. And I'd love to just hear the story of how it all unfolded.
Absolutely. So um, I guess I'll start with I'll backpedal a bit into the journey of when I found out about VPN and why I felt this burning passion to move away from my husband for VPN. Sean had actually introduced me to Nick Bear. This was back in beginning of college, so maybe 2014. Sean had found him on YouTube and he was big into his YouTube videos. And then he eventually started buying some of his supplements. And then when I started really getting passionate about health and fitness in 2017, I like dove right into everything that BPN was doing. And I was taking their subs and I started my bacon, mac, and cheese Instagram account that year. And so from there, fast forward a few years, I think it was 2020, it was April 2020, when BPN announced their ambassador program. Actually, before that, I had just done the Run One More marathon in February, and then in April was when they had announced their who they picked for their ambassador. But sidebar, one of the big reasons I wanted to do the Run One More marathon is because we were living in South Texas, and I'm like, we can drive to BPN, like they're having a meetup. So it's like I'm gonna do this half marathon too, just so I can like meet the team. And so I'm really glad we did that because that's when I got to show face and I got to personally meet Nick and Preston and George and Joe. And I got to, put a face to probably the girl on Instagram who was commenting on all the things. And I was so glad I did that because when they announced their ambassador program, I applied and I was then selected as one of the 10 ambassadors, which is wild to now think that that was 3 years ago and it has grown so much. It is so cool. Um, and so from there, I was just like, I was all in on preaching to anyone that would listen to me about BPN and what they stood for. And then that was in April where I became an ambassador. And then that same month is when I moved out here to Washington. And that was during the pandemic. And there was no in person community, everything was shut down. And I was just so thankful for the BPN community and that online community because it's like there was no one else. Like everyone was at home and so we would have our weekly, team meetings via Zoom, and that was so incredible. And then during that time, I was also struggling with like, okay, what is next for me? I'm having to keep getting new jobs with having to constantly move. I was right before we moved in Texas. I was a manager at the base gym. I finally was like, I finally have a job that I feel like aligns with what I want to do. And then we got orders to move, and it sucked. But at that same time is when I became an ambassador. I'm like, I feel like this is like I need to go all in on this. And so I had this epiphany a few months into living here where I said to Sean, I feel like I need to send an email to Nick Bear and just, you know, profess that I feel like I have some sort of piece of like I need to help them in some way. And it was like 11 o'clock at night where I felt this like I need to do this. And Sean was like, "We'll do it now. Don't wait till tomorrow." Like he was really one that told me write this email now at 11 o'clock at night. I was like, okay, I need to email him tomorrow. I was like, no, do it now before you get too scared. So he was the one urging me to do it. And I emailed him saying, like, if there's any position there, like these are all my skills. These are all the things maybe I'm not skilled in, but I'm willing to learn. Like, if there's ever anything that comes up, please think of me. And not too long after that, I got a an email from at the time someone who had worked there who was running the ambassador program saying that Nick was going to call me. And Nick called me and he said he wanted to get on a Skype call. So I got on a call or Zoom and got on a call. And then not too long after that, they wanted to fly me out there to interview me. And when I was out there, this was September 2020, they offered me a job as their community manager. So at first it was remote, and then they were like, "We want you out here." And it was like Sean and I didn't think twice. We were like, "Okay, well, this is happening." And he was like, "You need to go do this." And I was so scared, and I felt like this guilt of like I can't leave you. And he was like, "What's the difference? Like I've left you so many times. Like you've supported me to pursue my dream of flying jets, and I'm here and I'm living my dream. Now you need to go live your dream." And it was a hard decision of realizing like, okay, I just moved to Washington from Texas, about to move to Texas, but by myself.
Mm.
Um, and so that was just it's wild even just saying that out loud. I think it was really hard too because there's so many people who did not understand. Like you're there were people who said to my face, like, you're moving away from your husband for a job. And I was like, it's not just a job. Like I no one understood my like passion for why I needed to do this.
Mm.
Which there's a quote from one of your blogs I wanted to share where the blog was on most won't get it. And you said, when you go off the beaten path, most people, even those close to you, won't understand what you're doing, when you're where you're going and why you're doing it. That's normal. The most important thing is that you believe in the general direction you're moving and that you're able to figure things out as you go. Growth mindset. And that was totally it. It was like, we're going all in and it's okay if people don't get it. All that matters is Sean supports me. But it was still freaking hard. Like the actual move, my parents helped me. Thank goodness for them. They've also supported me, even if my dad's at times did not understand. He was still driving the U-Haul for me, and my mom drove in the car with me and the dog, and just living. That was also my first time living alone because Sean and I had had been together since high school. So it was my first time living in an apartment alone in a state with not a single family member. So very, very hard. But I wouldn't be for sure the person I am today without going through the whole hard experience.
Well, I feel like I would have something to say, but you quoted me, and that is what I would have
I
said. So,
had
I
to.
yeah, that's the first time that's ever happened. That's pretty cool. So all right, so you're down there, and the process is not even the process of getting down there. It's making the decision to do it. It's going
Yeah.
down there. It's doing the thing. That's all hard. And then if we had to get from that point where you got down there to back where we are right now, present day, what does that story look like?
Yeah. So I was out there, moved out there in December 2020, and I was working with VPN until literally a year ago now, May. I left there, my last day there was May 1st. So it's been a year since then. But during my time there, I had some of the most incredible opportunities. It was the wildest ride. I'm kind of bummed because my time there was during the pandemic. So there weren't all these incredible community activations that there are now. And I thrive with community. I remember they didn't even have because when I was an ambassador, there was supposed to be a big ambassador get together, and that was canceled because of the pandemic. So by the time they had one, I wasn't an ambassador anymore. I was working there, which was also really freaking cool. Um, but just the places we got to go, and the big accomplishments that Nick endured, that we got to support, and I mean the people of it all. Like I just can't talk enough about the people I got to meet. I mean, ambassadors and you, I wouldn't have known you if it weren't for that whole experience, and we wouldn't be here today. But also there was a lot of, I mean, you've seen the company grow. Like it's so cool to see how much it's grown. And I went through a period of time where I think there was this growth, and I have grown a lot. And between the company's growth and my personal growth, I reached a point where I realized I don't think I belong here anymore. And that was a really hard realization to come to terms with. I wrestled with that for a few months, and I tried to voice my opinions on certain things. And I think I just realized I knew my value and my worth, and I knew that there wasn't a place there for me anymore. And I was grateful. I remember I had written Nick a very long letter, and I said, like, to quote him, choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. The hard right was to leave this dream job that I know so many people want, over the easy wrong of staying because I know it's a place so many people want to be. And I knew it was hard to get there, but I knew it was the right decision. So yeah, I made the decision in April of 2022 that my journey with BPN as employee would come to an end. And then I ended up still living there for another 3 months in Georgetown, Texas, or Round Rock, Texas, because I had my lease still. And I took a remote opportunity. And my journey was to head back to Sean. But actually, at the time, I knew I wouldn't go back to Sean because we had just found out that he was getting deployed. So just kind of ironic. But I realized later on why that happened. I ended up deciding to go to Florida instead of back here to Washington because Sean wasn't going to be here. And it turned out to be the biggest blessing in disguise because I got to go home where my parents are, Sean's parents, my sister-in-laws, our niece and nephews. And for the last 6 years, I spent maybe, a week or two out of the last six, a year over the last 6 years with them. And I was about to spend 6+ months with them, which is like in your adult years, like, people who don't live around family, like, when do you ever get that opportunity? So I got to move back home. My parents, I joke around that they're my roomies for 6 months. And I got to actually make memories with my niece and nephews and be around for the holidays. And I spent from July to April, this past last month there, with a lot of travel in between, and just being more present and soaking up that time with them. And then Sean helped me move. This is the only move Sean helped me with. The other two my parents helped me with, where we moved from South Florida to Washington, which took a whole week. And now now I'm back here. We're finally settled in. We've just been soaking in this time together. I've spent so much time off of social media this past year as I've navigated so many transitions. I mean, a transition of a move is hard enough, but if transitioning jobs, I think I did two moves in that time frame and a deployment and there's so much in life, and that to give you a little insight as to why I'm like, let me take a little breather from some physical challenges because I'm just juggling a lot of life transitions right now.
Mm.
So a lot of hard and like I would not have guessed this is where the last 3 years would have taken me. This full circle moment, like now I'm back in the RV with Sean, but with an entirely new perspective, and I think it is so cool to like this is such a wild journey that I wouldn't have written for myself, but the perspective shift I have is really really special.
Thank you for sharing all that. I think a couple thoughts on my end. One, a lot of people would be afraid of going somewhere only to come back and not continue, if you will, in that same linear direction. It was almost as if you took a quick detour to Texas, not quick, 2 years, and then came back. I think a lot of people are afraid of that. However, you took away so much personal growth. You made so many connections. You learned so much about the world and about yourself. And it sounds like you would not trade that experience for the world. So I think that's important to highlight is just because you're not sure if you're going to continue down a linear path forever doesn't mean that you shouldn't explore that path. And then also, you've been making intentional decisions your entire life. Whether it was 12 years old, choosing to have that procedure, whether it was choosing to marry Sean, knowing that it would be challenging to live this lifestyle, whether it was going to Texas and then deciding to leave Texas. And I have a quote from Michael Gerber, who said, the difference between great people and everyone else is that great people create their lives actively, while everyone else is created by their lives, passively waiting to see where life takes them next. The difference between the two is the difference between living fully and just existing. And I feel like what you're doing and the stories you shared, that's living, not just existing. And I really just appreciate the fact that you can share all of that openly on a podcast um, for everybody to listen to. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that quote. That's a powerful one, and I'm so excited that that's the one you shared. And it's so fun how you it's all full circle. How you have a really powerful quote for everyone's story. So I appreciate that.
Of course. Now, what you've done has taken endurance. It hasn't been easy. It's been a long road. When you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
I absolutely used to link that to fitness. And now I think of endurance and I think of it as embracing life's peaks and valleys and taking challenges head on. Like life is going to be hard, but it's in the hard where you learn the most. And yeah, I just, life is a journey. Life is an endurance event. It's not a sprint, and it's you're going to come through many hurdles, and that's what makes life so beautiful. It makes you appreciate the good times that much more because you know what it's like to go through the hard times. So I think life is an endurance event, honestly.
I'm going to share a thought that I'll be honest, I'm impressed that this popped into my head. I was thinking of your heart, and then I was thinking of your answer to what the word endurance means to you. And I was thinking about how I think everybody wants life to just be steady in the middle. They don't want the downs, they don't want the valleys, and they could probably do without some of the peaks if they knew they could eliminate the valleys. But your heartbeat is a perfect example of what life looks like. There are ups and downs, highs and lows. And if you were just steady in the middle, you would flatline and you would be dead and you wouldn't be alive. And so I just think it's
Wow.
cool that, yeah, the endurance includes the highs and the lows. You can't have one without the other. And that's what life is. It's both of those and continuing to move forward with them.
Oh, I love that, especially since like we started off the podcast talking about my heart condition, and I feel like that ties in so well and so beautifully said. I love that, Joe.
Thanks, Megan. All right. So I'm going to ask you the final question. There are people listening to this podcast who are going through all sorts of hard things. Some people chose what they're going through, some people did not. And they get to listen to you for the next however long you want to talk. What would you say to the people who are going through something hard right now?
I would say that we have this one life to live, and don't be, even if you're going through a tough time, know that there's going to be, you know, you're going to break through and see the light on the other side, even if you're going through it. I think now, especially when I'm going through hard times, I just think, wow, I'm going to grow so much from this. And I think that's such a powerful thing. And it's hard to smile or have positive thoughts when you're going through something hard. But something that keeps me going is knowing I'm going to learn something from this. And then I get to share that with someone else who's going to go through that same thing. And I think that makes it so worth it. I also feel like, and this is something that I've been preaching to myself and others, that I think a lot of people need it too, is to be more present and romanticize the simple things in life. I think we're constantly, again, chasing things. I feel good once I reach this, or I need to reach this goal. But I feel like it's so important to be present and not let life pass you by. I feel like before, when I was living in this RV 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm not happy. I need to be, this isn't where I want to be. I thought I was gonna have this career, and now I'm back here, and I'm like, I'm so grateful to be here. I have my husband with me. I have my health. Like the things I had, I was in, Texas with my dream job, and I ultimately, in the day, ended up not being happy there. And I realized I had everything I needed right here. So I think just when you're going through hard times, it's important to just shift your perspective and also remind yourself, like, this is going to teach you something. And that's such a beautiful thing.
Mm. So well said. I don't have anything to add there. But if something you said resonated with somebody, if somebody wants to follow along with your journey or just reach out and say thanks, where's the best place for somebody to do that?
I'm going to be better with my Instagram. I would normally have said my Instagram, but I've like consciously taken a step back. I think it's been healthy for me, but I want to get back into it and connect with people again, like-minded individuals. So I would say my Instagram, which is Bacon, Megan, Cheese, is a great place. I do have a YouTube channel. I'm going to try to get back on that, Megan Murray. But I think those are both great places to reach out and connect.
One of the most creative Instagram handles I've ever come across. So I will link that in the description so people can find it. And Megan, just thank you again for this conversation, for the light that you are in this world, for everything that you do. I'm excited to see where life takes you next, or rather, where you choose to go next with intention in this life.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you for having me on and providing this amazing platform to share my story and hopefully helps at least one other person out there.
It will. Thank you, Megan.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.